So we would love to get started and be prompt, but before we start, I just wanted to acknowledge, I know everybody's been thinking and in deep emotion since the verdict yesterday of Derek Chauvin. And on the one hand, I feel relieved that that was the result. On the other hand, it's kind of crazy that I would have to feel relieved when we have 9 minutes of proof that clearly he was guilty. So I think we all know that although we're thankful that this one man was held accountable, that it's still insane that the system allows so many Black and brown people to be killed. Within hours of the verdict, there was a Black teenager in Columbus, Ohio, who was who was killed by the police as well. So we know that there's still a lot of work to be done. And honestly, that's why I'm here today. I entered the field of education because I thought that was the best way to address social justice issues, and I still believe that. And today we're focusing on hiring, and what better way to think very carefully about who are the people you want to put in front of your students, who are the role models we want for our students. So so that is what we're going to talk about today. And then a little bit of levity. Kim and I decided to offer some door prizes today. We are going to offer 2 books to some people. So comment in the chat. We're going to choose some people from the chat at the end of the day to give some at the end of the day. At the end of the hour, we won't keep you here that long. And we just thought we would start it off with a simple poll. Since we are starting with hiring, we would love to know what kind of hiring situation you are in. How many vacancies do you have? So this is just a quick Zoom poll. We'll just take 30 seconds if you could let us know. Are you trying to fill 0 positions? 1 to 2, 3 to 5? Does everybody see the poll?
I got it.
Okay, great. How many vacancies are you trying to fill for the coming year? I am not seeing anybody filling anything in. Maybe I'm still having trouble with the poll. Are people
mine in? I'm sending it in.
thumbs up? Yeah, okay. I'm not seeing it on my end, so we will see. I had a little glitch before. We'll see if it works. We'll just take 10 more seconds. That's not a very so do people have results? Because on my end, it's all
Nope.
0.
No, I can see it. Yeah, so we got 27% 1 to 2, 37% 3 to 5, 10% 6 to 10, and then more than 10, 17%. So, and a couple of zeros. So it's a lot of people are hiring.
Thank you. Thanks for that's a very odd glitch, so I couldn't see that. Okay, well, that's what we're doing. So just to let you know what we're doing today, this is not a webinar. So if you just want to sit there with your coffee, this is not the session for you. Kim and I believe that the best learning happens when it is interactive. That's why we're asking for your videos to be on. So just very briefly, we're going to introduce ourselves and this book. We are going to ask people to share some of their best practices around hiring in a first breakout group. Then we're going to go over the different chapters in this book and have you choose one and read it silently. So there's going to be breakouts, there's going to be reading, there's going to be a second breakout to share what you learned in your chapter. And we're going to end with me describing how you can share these ideas with your hiring committee to make a real impact in your school or district. So, so yes, it's going to be super interactive. Kim, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Sure. So as many of you know from the Marshall Memo, I was a teacher, a central office person in the Boston schools for 32 years, staggered out of the principalship in 2002 and had this idea of being the designated reader for busy school people, which I had not had when I was a principal in Boston. And so I started subscribing. I now subscribe to 60 publications. Each Sunday, I sit down and read through about 150 articles. Some of them I'm skimming. And then I pick 8 or 10. And then on Monday, I sit down and write a good summary of each one of them. And then I send it out Monday night, and it gets to subscribers all around the world on Tuesday. And the whole purpose of the memo is to put people in touch with what I believe are the very best ideas and resources in K-12 education. And I also do a lot of consulting with principals virtually this year, but mostly on the ground. And I also do a lot of speaking, particularly on the issue of teacher supervision and evaluation. But hiring has always been close to my heart. And as a principal, I think some of the worst mistakes I made were last minute rushed hiring, believing a reference who it turned out wasn't telling the full truth about someone. So I regard hiring as every hiring situation as an opportunity to affect the life and pedagogy and school climate, adult climate of the school for years to come. I think that your legacy, the positive one, and I do think I made some good hiring moves at the Mather School in Boston, is just a hugely important thing. And I don't think there are any shortcuts. So that what we're going to talk about today is just really how we can do this in the most effective possible way. So the chapter we're looking at today, Interviewing and Hiring, chapter 4 from book 1, has 3 sections: spotting the right candidates. So this raises the whole question of, can you tell in advance how someone is going to be in the classroom, before you actually see them teach? And of course, seeing them teach is part of the thing too, demo lessons. Hiring strategy, the whole sort of process of from very quick, hits with people in a hiring fair where you only have like 5 minutes with someone, up to a full dress interview, to what you can get candidates doing when they visit your school. And hopefully we'll be back to that kind of situation in the fall. And then the whole issue of interview questions, the kinds of questions we ask. And I must say that over the years that I was hiring, I asked some pretty ineffective questions. And we have one article in particular, which is actually my favorite article, by Mary Clemens, University of Delaware, is really a superb set of suggested questions. Many of you have probably found questions like these in your experience. So that's my favorite article. Okay, so Jen, take it away.
Sorry, I'm on mute. To counter Kim's sunny side, I'm going to say one of the things about hiring, I'm going to take the negative side, which is that mistakes in hiring can be some of the costliest mistakes that you can make. They can add to a toxic culture. It can take years to get rid of people. So think of the highs and the lows when you think about hiring. But anyway, I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Jenn David Lang, and I run a similar service to Kim, but instead of summarizing journal articles, I summarize books. Every month, as part of the main idea, I email school leaders an 8-page summary of a book with PD ideas they can use to bring the ideas from the book into their school or district. And then on top of that, I run mastermind groups. I have some mastermind members here this afternoon, which are basically groups of 8 to 10 school and district leaders. We meet every other week for an hour for professional learning like this, for problem solving, strategy sharing, support, feedback. So if you like this hour, it might be something that you are interested in. I'm going to cheat, and instead of sharing one article that I like, I'm going to share 2. The first article is the Elena Aguilar article, which is the last one in the chapter. She writes about hiring for emotional intelligence, and she tells a story about this teacher she once coached who cried through all of her coaching sessions and kept saying, oh, I can't believe these kids are disrespecting me, and ended up quitting at the end of the year. So if we were ever to have a year when you might want to think about hiring for emotional intelligence, this is the year. This has been an incredibly difficult year. When we all open our doors again for the next school year, it's not going to be an easy one. So there are some suggestions for questions and ways to hire for emotional intelligence. The second thing, I'm going to cheat in another way, which is I'm going to tell you about an article that's not in this chapter, but I will email it to everyone followed up. And it's about hiring for diversity. And that's obviously something huge that you can do to impact your school. And I want to share a quote from the article since it's not there. The authors say that long enduring marriages don't start with the ceremony. One of the most common mistakes is treating diversity and hiring as an afterthought, rather than as a long-term relationship, complete with courtship and mutual commitment. So this means that it's important to build a culture that welcomes and supports student color, rather than just thinking, oh, it's hiring season, I got to do something about this. So there's a lot of great material in that article as well, but we will get to that later. We are going to start with a breakout group where we would love for you to share what are your, and Allegria is going to put this question in the chat. What is the most effective tool, strategy, idea that your school or district has for hiring? And the idea is to not be vague and not be humble, be specific and brag, because if we can share our best hiring strategies, then you'll all walk away with some really good strategies. So we are going to get into breakouts for about 8 minutes. And I would love it if people with the longer hair can start first, and people with the shortest hair, sorry, the longest hair, you go first, introduce yourself real quick, and then share your best strategy for hiring. And then the person with the shortest hair, can you facilitate and get people moving? Because we'll have only about 8 minutes. So I'm going to put you into groups now, and please join us. Okay. We'll see you in 16 minutes. I'm sorry, in 8 minutes. And the question is in the chat if you can't find it. Longest hair people go first. People got a few strategies, certainly reading, you'll get a few more. There are a lot of great strategies out there. I love the strategies in all the articles in this chapter, but I know, I know that strategies from peers are often great to get the insider scoop to see what's going on. So I think we just about have everybody back. I hope everybody got something from hearing other people's strategies, what they do. And yes, we've got just about everybody. Hi, Emily McElhaney, how are you? All right, Kim, you want to do the next section? But I'm going to share something, and this is a terrible rookie teacher mistake. You don't give out the handout until people touch it. But I have to put up a Zoom poll so you'll know what Kim is referring to, but do not click on it, okay? Kim, you're muted. Hold on. You're still muted, Kim. Kim, you're muted.
Now I'm unmuted. the most common sentence in the English language this year, you're on mute. By the way, in my intro, I forgot to mention the bridge between the Marshall Memo, the weekly memo, and the books, and also the bridge with Jenn, which is Jenn is incredibly good at doing PD. And so when we teamed up, when I realized, okay, I've got to do a book with the best summaries of the Marshall Memo for the last 16 years, and who better to do a PD section for each chapter than Jenn. So that's how it came about. And we have 2 books now. So we're looking at a chapter from one of them. Okay, so in this chapter, there are, let me just run through these 10 articles before you vote, because you're going to be silently reading one of these, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms and we'll do a jigsaw where you share with the other people in the group what you got out of your article. So the first article is Billy Beane's Moneyball Baseball Scouting Advice. And those of you who've seen the book Moneyball about the Oakland team that used a completely different way of picking players, in the same way, this article talks about 9 ways of things to look for that might not be the obvious things, like a degree or a credential and so forth. Second article is Fixed and Growth Mindset. Carol Dweck writing about fixed and growth mindset we talk about in kids, but with teachers, it's just as, or perhaps more important, what their mindset is about their professional life as well as kids. Third article is about grit, crucial variable in teachers, and how you can spot it in advance. And this article has some very clever ways of what to look for example, in a resume. The fourth article, we're skipping number 4, but the fourth one in this list is the 10-minute screening interview. So Paul Ash talking about if you've only got 10 minutes, you want to use that time effectively. You don't want to do the full 40-minute interview if you know in the first 10 minutes what's going on. So his strategy is to do the 10-minute first, and then move on to longer interviews with a selection of people. Next one is Doug Reeves talking about 3 suggested tasks when you get someone into your school. And thank goodness we're going to be back to that, I think, in the fall, over the summer perhaps. observing actual classes, looking at student data, and then looking at actual student work. So critically important things if you have the time to pick good teachers, to pick the very most effective teachers. Next article is reference calls. And this is, if I'd had the time in the breakout rooms, I would have told a horror story about a hiring situation that I had as a Boston principal, where the reference calls actually lied to us about a candidate. And we hired someone who turned out to be not very effective. And so these are strategies. How do you get the truth out of a reference call? People who are perhaps nervous about getting sued and so forth, how do you get them to tell the truth? And by the way, this is one of my takeaways from the pandemic going forward is let's do reference calls on Zoom so that we can watch the person's face while they talk about a candidate, okay, rather than just being on the phone with them. Next article is, should candidates be asked about their philosophy of teaching? And I think the next article by Marie Clement tells us a very strong negative to that one. That is a wasted interview question. Marie Clement, the next article, talks about experience-based questions. And this article is on the long side, but I do encourage you to pick this one. You can skim over because there are lots and lots of examples of the very best experience-based questions. Next article, the ninth one, is questions to assess curriculum planning and data savvy, two of the deepest skills. If we can find people who know about backwards curriculum planning and who know about looking at data, that is a fantastic plus. So we don't have to teach them that on the job. And then the last one is watching for and developing emotional intelligence in teachers. That's the one that Jen referred to earlier on. A fabulous article about, again, getting up front of a process, not hiring somebody who doesn't have that. Okay, so go ahead in the poll now, vote for the article that you are most interested in reading, and it'll also tell us a lot about which articles are going to pop out in our final processing here. So vote and then hit submit.
And sorry if the numbering is confusing. We pulled out article number 4 because Zoom only allows you to have 10. So we that's why the numbers look weird. 3, 4, 6. We do know how to count. Sorry about that.
Just don't vote for 4.
And yeah, why don't we just take, and don't worry, you're not committed to this. You can vote for an article you want to read, and we're going to give you time to read. You can read whichever one you want. Everybody should have a copy of the chapter. I sent it in my last email, and I'll agree to put it in the chat earlier. So you're going to want to have that open in just a moment. So let's end the poll and see what people said.
This also gives us feedback on our choice of articles, which ones we chose that seem to be the most interesting to people.
Okay, so can you see the results, Kim?
I can. So the top vote getter is number 9, experience-based questions. I guess my sales pitch for that one was effective. But then we have, let's see, the lowest that I see here is the second article, fixing growth mindsets. People have probably got that one under their belt. Grit also got only 3% of our votes here. And also, should applicants be asked a philosophy of teaching question? People didn't go for that one. But then experience-based questions, let's see, we've also got, okay, well, so people can see this, so I don't need to go over it. Okay, so
what we're going to do is everybody should have a copy of the chapter. It's again in the chat, and we're going to do a silent read, which is a great thing to do with your staff meetings. We do that in our mastermind where we don't ask people to read ahead of time. We put together a 1-pager and everyone reads live. It's a great way to make sure everyone reads. So we're going to ask everybody to take 6 minutes or 5 minutes to read one of the articles from the chapter, and then Allegra is going to put the 2 questions in the chat that we are going to ask you to discuss in a second breakout group. Just what resonated with you from the article, and then what implications for hiring in your school or district. So let's take 5 minutes to silently read any article you pick.
Or a different one, just whatever you're most intrigued with.
Going to put people into breakout groups again, and we'll reverse it this time. Person with the shortest hair goes first, and the person with the longest hair, can you facilitate? And we really just want to know what's one thing that resonates from the article, and then what are the implications? What might you bring back to your own school or district? We're going to take about 10 minutes this time.
So Jen, before you go, I just want to say hello to Lorna Lewis. Good to see you again. So are you still making good trouble out there on Long Island?
That's the only way to go, my dear. It's so good to see you.
And did you see that John King is running for governor?
Oh, please, let's not talk.
No, okay, yeah.
This is off script.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Good. I hope everyone was able to get a sense, even though you only read one article, that hope people were able to gather things from other people's articles. We are going to share one takeaway in the chat. So if you want to think about what yours will be, wait a second before you put it in so everyone can read it. I'll agree. You want to put that question in the chat. What's an idea about hiring? Or in. Great. We should have almost everybody back now. I hope it was useful to hear what was in the other articles, and hopefully it was useful to read the article that you did choose. Obviously, the chapter is yours. You can read them all later. If people could share what's an idea that really stuck with you in the chat, it's useful to hear what other people think. So put your idea in and read the chat. And Kim.
And now, if we have some brave souls who want to share their idea with everybody. And I know that Steve Adler, you're going to tell us about your 3 kinds of rocks. Do you want to go ahead and do that? And others who want to share an idea, click the reactions in the bottom right. And there is a raise hand thing, which will send you to the top so we can see you and call on you. But Steve, are you comfortable sharing your piece?
Sure, Kim. I was just sharing that when I meet with my hiring committee and we talk about the qualities that we are seeking in a candidate, I've used an activity that's been used for other kinds of work, where I ask the people on my committee to help me identify what are the boulders, what are the basic essential characteristics that we really want to make sure all of our candidates have, what are the rocks, which are important, but not quite as big as the boulders, and what are the pebbles where it'd be really nice if they had these things. Maybe they're familiar with some of our curriculum programs or things that, be helpful, but they're not the basic standard that we need to make sure all boulders have. I was struck that one of my teachers, his very first boulder was that they be collaborative. And I thought, if I'm a classroom teacher, absolutely, I want a colleague who I'm going to collaborate well with. And so that's how we started our discussion as we prepared for an interview.
Great, thank you so much. So others, if you want to raise your hand the old-fashioned way or using the electronic thing, we'd love to hear what jumped out from any article, but particularly perhaps the one that you just read, that you want to share with the whole group, because there are insights here that all of us can benefit from. Go ahead, Sharon.
Hi there. So I chose the article about emotional intelligence because I thought that's what I needed to get better at, is finding out which candidates score higher in that capacity. But in my group, one of my members talked about grit. And then I realized maybe it's more important, first of all, for me to name what I'm looking for and get it right. Because when I heard what you talked about with grit, it's really grit, which is what I need to look for, more so than emotional intelligence for the jobs of people coming to Guatemala to relocate to our community, to teach in a dual language school, to be in a different population. So I think my team needs to kind of name it, define it, and then go forward. But I'm going for the ones with grit right now.
Great, very helpful. Others who want to share a particular idea or practice, or maybe even a negative practice that we want to not do. Go ahead, Joseph.
I just saw one comment that a master's degree in elementary school did not necessarily correlate with success, but a master's degree in, I think it said middle and high school, especially in the math and sciences, does. That just made me think, and I don't understand why that is. Do you have any ideas?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, credentials in general aren't doing too well, right? That came through pretty clearly in one of the articles. But then when you're in a specialized area, especially high school math, perhaps, you really want to make sure the person knows their stuff. And then, good interview questions also, you're going to probe for that. Does that make sense?
I guess, but I can't understand why a master's degree in elementary level is actually a negative. I think turns out to be a negative predictor.
Well, I guess it's a comment on the quality of the program they were in. not the one we were in, of course, but that in general, ed schools have not come through too terrifically well, right? In the world of professional practice. And so that must be what's behind it. But we should look into that some more.
One of the, what is it, Billy Bean's 9 things to look for? One of them was a good college.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting. Although you want to probe beyond that. Other comments, thoughts, ideas you want to make sure to surface with the whole group. And I can't see everyone, so wave your hand or do the electronic thingy. Go ahead, Maria. See you.
Hi.
Hello.
So I was, I read article number 1, and I was super surprised to share with my group that the comment of the learning curve flattening by year 5, and that there was not a huge difference between hiring a 5-year teacher versus a 15 to 25-year teacher. And I thought of myself immediately because I left my school in Brooklyn, which was my only job that I was hired and appointed to in 1994 after 22 years, and transferred to District 79 in Staten Island. And I'm glad the hiring committee didn't think that because I was 22 years in at the time. That was kind of shocking to me.
Now, I actually think that article has been superseded by some additional ones that I've done in the Marshall Memo since then, which said, yes, there is a steep learning curve at the beginning. Yes, that's definitely true. The first 5 years, the steep learning curve. But then after that, people do continue to get better. And so I think we're going to have to go back and edit out that piece, because not just in your case, but now some people do plateau, some people do become complacent, some people burn out, and that is certainly true. And that's the kind of thing you probe for. Perhaps that would be an interview question, right? Okay, I notice you're in year 95 of your teaching. What have you learned in the last 16 years that's been particularly helpful? Yeah, that's. I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that is we want to be cautious about that conclusion. People who are sometimes growing correctly. Maria, it looks like you had one more thought.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I definitely felt like I didn't feel like a real teacher until I hit like years 5 to 7. Because my first year, it was a pilot program, and they had me teaching English, which was my license, Spanish because I spoke Spanish because I am half Puerto Rican. So, she can teach Spanish because we can only hire 2 teachers. I taught global studies, and I had the kids for phys ed 3 times a week. So it was nuts. So that first year to me was like a wash.
Wow.
And then, the next, because I was everywhere. I was planning for all these things, and they hired a math and science person to teach for the algebra regents and for bio.
Let's just have a quick show of hands here. How many of you had a tough first year of teaching? Oh my goodness me. Seems to be a fairly common experience. We have time for perhaps 1 or 2 more comments. Raise your hand if you have one more thing you want to throw in from your article or from some other experience, including negative experiences about hiring.
I think AJ, go ahead, AJ.
So I really appreciated the article from Doug Reeves, and the idea that getting candidates into the classrooms and observing and then seeing what their comments are instead of just interviewing them. I think that adds a layer. But I would add, one other piece to that. If they're talking to the principal or the person doing the hiring, they may be more guarded. But if you can have that experience where before the interview even starts, that one committee member who may be a teacher leader takes them around the school and listens to what they say about the school before the interview even starts, that may add another layer, and people may be more honest and not realize that they started the interview as soon as they walked out the door to go into the school.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to add something else about the Doug Reeves article. Some people have been asking about hiring for diversity, and Doug Reeves has a really interesting task that he shares where he says, take a whole bunch of student work from the same student and then give each piece of work a different name that suggests a particular background, a Jennifer Chen, a Cesar Martinez, and have a candidate grade, score, or rate the papers or the assignments, and that's one way to possibly look for bias. So I just wanted to point out that article to people who are asking about that. Sorry, Kim, you had a question?
That study has been done and it is devastating. People's implicit bias, that's one of the areas where it comes out. But one of the most effective areas on diversity of hiring is shaping the pool. It's just being really aggressive and getting out there to historically black colleges, to schools of education, to just all over the place, and starting early, starting in December. Now we can't time travel back, but just shaping the pool so the candidates you come up with and you're interviewing with are really diverse. So it is time for Jenn to give us perhaps the most valuable part of this hour, which is her PD section. And again, remember she and I collaborated on finding the very best articles from 16 years of the memo, and we put them together. She really helped to shape them into categories. Jenn has been an incredible thought partner, but then she wrote a unique section at the end of every chapter on how to put this to work. So Jenn, take it away.
So yeah, I also want to get back to, thank you, Kim, that the topic of hiring for diversity. And one of the things you're going to want to do is train your hiring committee, right? Because a lot of the hiring has to do with the beliefs and the thoughts and the actions of this committee. So I'm going to send you an article as a follow-up that you can use to get people to think a little bit about some of those things that we always thought were a good thing, right? Like hiring for fit. That actually might be code for excluding people in your school, right? So I highly suggest you share this article with your hiring committee. So yes, at the end of this chapter, I give you some ideas for ways you can train your hiring committee. You can introduce these ideas to your hiring committee. So I'm going to share one of the ideas with you that I have at the end, and it is our third and final poll, which a lot of you have read, but imagine your hiring committee might not have read any of the articles that you've read. So the question is, which of these factors correlate with teacher effectiveness and longevity that they'll stay? And you can click on as many as you want, scroll down there, 10. And it's completely anonymous. I don't know who's written what, but you could do this with your hiring committee. So which factors in a potential teacher candidate correlate with teacher success and longevity? And obviously you can choose as many as you want, think correlate. And it's anonymous. I'll give you 30 seconds. It's just to show you what you could do.
So you're suggesting finding an anonymous way to poll your screening committee, ask these same questions?
Yep, and this is in the back section, so you can draw, this is literally from that section there. I just translated into a Zoom poll. All right, so take your last one in 5 seconds. And so it turns out, just for ease for myself, I made it every other one. So based on these articles, so you can share this poll with your hiring committee, then have them read some of the articles, like the first one, that helps to debunk these ideas that we have, right? That somebody who's been teaching for 20 years is the best candidate, that someone who's got the highest degree, the PhD, is the best candidate. So it turns out that every other one of these correlates with teacher effectiveness and longevity. So high expectations for students, absolutely. Licensure and credentials, not necessarily. Growth mindset, yes, and emotional intelligence, those correlate. Having an advanced degree, not necessarily, although the articles did say for math and science at the high school level. So there's a little nuance there. College GPA, SAT scores, no. Ability to connect with students, number one, right? Teacher with itness and cultural competence also. So this is just an activity that you can do with your hiring committee. I forgot one more thing. We have our door prizes. Kim, could you just randomly select two numbers between 1 and 20 for our door prizes?
7 and 14.
Okay, I'll agree. If you could find the 7th and 14th person to introduce themselves in the chat, by the end, we will have 2 winners for the book. Sorry about that. So anyway, in this PD section at the end, that's one suggestion that I do with your hiring committee. I also suggest that you absolutely have them read some of these articles and really come up with your own list of characteristics that you want to look for. Yes, ones that do predict teacher success and longevity, but come to consensus. What is it that you're looking for? And then if you read the whole chapter, if you have your committee read the whole chapter, you'll realize there's a whole bunch of ideas for the process of hiring. So have the team read these ideas and come to consensus on which components do you want as part of your process. Do you want that 10-minute interview that was in one of the articles? Do you want some of those tasks like the one that I shared with by Doug Reeves of the different student work with different names? Do you want to do an interview on Zoom like Kim suggested quickly? So go through the chapter with your hiring committee and list the components that you would like to include. And then finally, the interview questions. Just there's so many great interview questions in this chapter, but like Sharon said earlier about grit, so often we come up with questions just because we think they're good, kind of like planning activities as teachers, right? Oh, you know, name a time when you got a student engaged. We just like that, but it's better to start with the end in mind, plan backwards. So what are the characteristics of the teachers that you would like to hire? Oh, grit. And there's a chart that I have where you list the characteristics. So you want grit, you want cultural competence, then what's the question you might ask to get at that characteristic? So have your hiring team list the characteristics, the questions, and then what are the look fors? So if you say you want cultural competence and you're going to ask a question about it, what are the look fors in the interview so you know that you are seeing it? I also have a suggestion of a role play. You can certainly role play an interview and you can see how the hiring team rates this pretend candidate, because you really want to norm and get everybody on the same page. Otherwise, you're really looking for different things and you're at cross purposes and wasting your time. So yeah, so you can look at the end of the chapter for these ideas for ways to introduce the ideas to your team. Alegria, did you have time to find the 7th and 4th person and tell us who the winners are? And we'd love you to stay after because we need your email addresses.
I did. So the 7th person is Jose Falcon. And the 14th person is Catherine Hang in Line. I send them to you.
Okay, you did. Okay, great. Oh, there we go. Great. That's fantastic. We have with 1 minute left. If people want to share one final commitment that you would like to make at when you leave, because it's good not to just listen and talk, but to actually do something. If people could share one commitment in the chat, it's 5:59. Kim, are you okay to stay a couple minutes as people?
Yeah, but I just have one quick question that came up in the first breakout room for you, Jen. Where do you stand on the issue of whether a hiring committee should ask exactly the same questions to each candidate?
I would think for consistency, you would want a base of questions, but then different candidates are coming from different experiences. So I think you would need to tailor it. You know, if somebody had a whole experience and tells you about a time they had a terrible classroom management question, you might ask some follow-ups about that. So I would say a combination.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan. Great.
So some commitments. So Jim Messina, having more conversations with your hiring committee ahead of time. Debrief on this with your hiring committee, train the hiring committee. I know people sometimes don't even think to do that, right? I will share new insights. Yes, more intentional planning. Excellent. Share this with your administrative team. Fantastic. Good. Commit to reading the rest of the chapter. Yes. Sometimes you can use these chapter chats to try to get yourself to read the chapter before, or certainly now you're inspired to do it after. These are some good commitments from people. Hyatt says 3-2-1 scale and 10-minute screeners. Great. Fantastic. If you'd like to unmute and just say goodbye, that's great. We really appreciate everyone taking a time when we know how busy you are, and good luck during hiring season. I will.
Well, I'm going to correct you there. Not good luck. Much success.
Much success. Much success with your hiring. We know how high those stakes are to bring the right people on board. So, and feel free to follow up with any questions that you have. We will be around. Thank you so much for your time during this busy time. I hope everybody walked away with something.